It shouldn't surprise anyone that the subject of religion was one of the earliest subjects taken up by psychology. Back when Freud, Jung, and Skinner were looking at the ways that humans thought, felt, and behaved, religion was everywhere. It was just part of the human experience. And so all psychologists had a little something to say about what religion was and how it functioned. The first person to really look into religious conversion, however, was a guy named Starbuck back in the late 1800s. Following up on his work was a guy named William James. James and Starbuck both worked in a time when the so-called conversion crisis was the basic idea of how people became religious. A conversion crisis is seen as a sort of lightning bolt that struck the person, and they immediately went from being an unbeliever to being a believer, a literal come to Jesus moment. Now, for the record, the crisis conversion is not the standard model for religious conversion anymore. But today we're going to be looking at the reverse of the crisis conversion, what I call the deconversion crisis, here on Switching Sides. So back when Starbuck and James were studying conversion, religion was the norm. Everyone grew up going to church and tent meetings. The Bible was read at political rallies and was accepted by the common person as a source of wisdom and authority. In short, everyone was religious to one degree or another. If you read through these early conversion stories, you'll notice that most of the people converting were in their teens. And this did not escape William James's notice either, as he explicitly states that conversion seems to occur mostly during adolescence. Deconversion mostly occurs during adolescence as well, but that's a subject for another time. What James was noticing was more than likely another phenomenon we call an intensification experience. Adolescence is a time of identity formation. Teenagers will look to their peers, their environment, their interests, and how people see them as clues to who they truly are deep inside. Sometimes, if the teenager is religiously involved, they will come to the conclusion that their true identity lies within their religion. Suddenly, they become very interested in religion. They recommit themselves to religion. They get baptized, they start participating in church events or missions, and they make plans to join the ministry. They have, in a word, intensified their religious commitment. Now, people leave the church all the time, and many of these exiters end up identifying as not religious, but not atheists, but not spiritual, but nothing in particular. They are out of the religious game. They have no stake or dog in that race. These are people who will never really form a strong religious identity, and they never did in the first place. They weren't all in. They didn't make religion part of their core identity anyway. So they didn't lose much in the exit. The deconverts who talk about, blog about, podcast about, and write about their experiences, the ones who confidently check the atheist box on the survey, these were the ones who had, at one point, strongly committed to their religious beliefs. Because religion is so core to the person's identity, the exit was traumatic in several ways. As the person goes through the phase of deconversion I call processing, they begin to look at each of their core beliefs, identifying the flaws and discarding those beliefs. At some point, there's nothing left to discard, and they realize they have no attachment to religion left. Remember that these people were very active within their religious environments. At some point during this process, they come to realize that they're pretending more than they are believing. Just being in that religious environment and having to talk the talk about a lot of things you really don't believe is a slog each week. This is about when the crisis occurs. This person realizes that they just aren't a Christian. But if they're not a Christian, then who are they? A second identity crisis occurs.
The idea of getting up on stage and singing songs like Drops in the Ocean and Diamonds and Live Like You're Loved, like the idea of singing those songs, if I didn't believe them, was so terrifying to me, because I really value honesty. And I was like, if I find myself in a position where I am financially required to sing these songs, but I don't believe them, that's horrifying.
But the second identity crisis is worse, because not only do they have to rediscover who they are, but everyone around them has to rediscover them. Again, being a Christian was core to their identity, so it's what everyone else knew them as. But now that's exactly what they aren't. And so the identity crisis is on both sides. They don't know who they are, and neither does anyone else. And that is pretty traumatic.
But it's huge, you know. I mean, I experienced deconversion from born-again Christianity, and that's not something that's easy for anybody. That's not something that is even safe for a lot of people, because they risk losing their partner, they risk losing their job, they risk losing their family, and life as they knew it.
Yeah.
When a person becomes a believer, they form what the church would call a testimony, which gradually becomes more fleshed out over time as the person looks back across his or her life and sees how everything that ever happened to them somehow worked together to bring them to the point where they converted. More is added to his or her testimony as he or she continues to be a Christian, and everything which happens to this person is interpreted as being providential. Good things are a blessing, and bad things can be a test or ways to bring about future blessings. Something similar happens when a person deconverts. No longer having this Christian framework to view the world through, this person has to look back across his or her life as a believer and ask the question, why did I used to believe and do those things? They form a deconversion narrative, which places in context their entire Christian lives. This is also a story of struggle and discovery, wherein they are the hero who has escaped an institution they now reject.
Here's my story of what I guess you could say an atheist version of redemption looks like. Bear in mind that when you're in it as deeply as I was, there usually isn't one aha moment. Reshaping your entire worldview takes massive time and effort.
The deconversion narrative has 4 tasks. To explain how one used to believe what one now finds unbelievable, to explain what once felt like spiritual experiences, to document the process by which one exited religion, and to explain one's current worldview. The formation of this deconversion narrative can be similarly traumatic because it involves a deep examination of all the lies they believed and of all the harms they potentially did to themselves and others because of their religious beliefs and actions. When one combines the dawning realization that comes during processing that they don't believe the things they are hearing and saying, and that they are pretending to be someone they're not, the identity crisis and frequent rejection that comes with losing religion and religious community, and the formation of the deconversion narrative, these put together form the pillars of the deconversion crisis that marks the termination of one's religious life. Lest I paint too dim a picture, it's worth noting that deconversion isn't all doom and gloom. In my surveys on the subject, deconverts most frequently reported positive feelings after exiting religion. Relief at not pretending to be someone they're not. Happiness at being able to reconstruct themselves. And hope for a future free from religion. Though the subject of this video was the crisis that follows deconversion, deconversion often contains relief as well.